So what about setting up, you're a same-sex couple and you want to buy property? Should it be in both names, one person's name, a trust, tenant in the entirety, or, how does one go about doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and couples struggle with this all the time. If you're married, you would purchase property as tenants by the entirety, which is title that's held by a married couple, and there are certain financial protections that go along with it, creditor protections, and it's the standard title. It doesn't have to be that way. But for the majority of us, we have options about how we want title to be held. And the time to decide that is when people are happy with each other, when people are looking forward to making a purchase, and when the future is looking bright. You don't want to wait to decide these issues until there are problems, and you want to give it good consideration and thought when people are happy. So if you're going to purchase property with somebody else with whom you're not married, then your options are to purchase it either as joint tenants or as tenants in common. The other option is that you can purchase property with different shares. So you and I could potentially purchase property, and let's say I'm putting 25% down payment and you're putting 75% down, and let's say I intend to pay 25% of the mortgage and you intend to pay 75% of the mortgage. We could have the deed specify that you have a 75% interest in the real estate and I have a 25%. So that's one way to do it. And we could also have an agreement on the side that says that if I pay all the mortgage or I start making payments that go beyond my anticipated contribution, then if we need to sell the property, I'm going to get back my financial contribution towards the property. You could do it that way. The other way to do it, if you're just going to share the property with 50-50 interest in it, is to purchase it and title it either, as I mentioned, joint tenants or tenants in common. If we were to own property as joint tenants, that means that on your death, I get all the property. Conversely, if I die first, you get all the property. So it's a joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, meaning that the survivor, the one who survives longer, keeps the entire property on the death of the first person. On the other hand, if we select to own our property as tenants in common, then what we are doing legally on our deed is saying that you have a 50% interest in the real estate, and on your death, your 50% share goes to those people who are your heirs or who you designate in your will, and my 50% goes to my heirs or the people who I designate in my will. So let's say, for example, that I die before you. In law, we call this, I would predecease you. So if I predeceased you, my 50% share would go to the people who are my heirs or who I designate in my will, and you would still own a 50% share, and you'd have to share the property with my heirs or the people I designate in my will. And that can get messy.
It could get very messy, I'd imagine.
Exactly. I mean, if I have 18 cousins and they all have an interest in the property, then you are sharing the property with 18 cousins.
People.
So you need to consider this, and these are the issues that lawyers can help people sort through.
And I imagine there's a lot of issues once you start getting into it. Again, I'm Tim Lynch. I'm your host on MLGBA Legal Lines. My guest today is Lisa Cukier. If you'd like to join our discussion, please do. The number here is 617-708-3290, 617-708-3290. Well, there were other considerations, what I understand. If you're a same-sex couple, you're married in Massachusetts, and one person owns property, the other one doesn't. I've heard this so many times, and I find it actually frightening. That, you're married, we're married, and I own a piece of property. The first thought is, well, I should put my spouse on the property, and people go ahead and do that without thinking, and there are consequences, and
there are
federal tax consequences, to say the least.
There are tax consequences. What a lot of people don't realize is that even though Massachusetts allows same-sex marriage. And even though all the laws that apply to straight spouses in Massachusetts are the same for gay spouses in Massachusetts, the federal government, on the other hand, does not recognize same-sex marriage. There is legislation that was enacted in 1996 called DOMA. It's the Defense of Marriage Act. And that legislation that was enacted denies the existence of same-sex marriages. So what that means is that if you were married to your same-sex spouse and you put his name on your deed, then according to the federal government, you're making a gift. And that has gift tax consequences. It has extraordinary tax consequences because real estate is a valuable asset with a lot of value, and it's an expensive piece of property. And so you'd be encountering all kinds of tax issues that need to be accounted for. There are accountants who understand how to sift through these issues and how to work through these issues, and lawyers do as well. So it's very important for same-sex couples to get counsel by their lawyer, by their accountant, and by a financial planner before they start transferring assets, whether the transfers are incident to marriage or simply without marriage. Same thing. The same thing applies. These are considered transfers between friends, whether you're married or not, if you're same-sex. And that's because the federal government has stated that marriage can only be between one man and one woman, and so a same-sex marriage is not recognized by the federal government.
So all the more reason, if you're a same-sex married couple, to see someone like you to be proactive.
Absolutely.
You know, get everything done and make sure you know, not only the ramifications with your family, but the ramifications with the federal government, in particular taxes.
That's right. It's very tricky.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much.
It was
Really
my pleasure.
appreciated having you here today. You've been watching Legal Lines, MLGBA Legal Lines. My name is Tim Lynch. I am your host. We appear live every third Wednesday of every month at 4 o'clock. Our next program in February, I will have someone from PFLAG to tell us what they have been up to, and they've actually been very busy lately, so looking forward to that program. Thank you very much for tuning in to MLGB Legal Lines, and see you next month. Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, so many.